Welcome to Access Church. We're stoked you're with us. Before we get into the teaching today, grab your Bible, your note sheet, and maybe your favorite beverage, and be ready to receive all that God has for you today.
Good morning, Access Church. We love you guys so much, and we cannot wait to worship with you in person. But until then, let's just praise our Lord for another day, and let's just thank Him for the glorious day. Here we go. Come on. I was buried beneath my shame. Who could carry that kind of weight? It was my tomb till I met you. Oh, yeah. I was breathing but not alive. Yes, I was. All my failures I tried to hide. It was my tomb till I met you. And you called my name, and I ran out of that grave. Woo! Out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave. Out of the darkness into your glorious day. Now my mercy has saved my soul. Oh yeah. Now your freedom is all that I know. The old man knew Jesus when I met you. Oh yes, you called my name, and I ran out of that grave. Out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name, and I ran out of that grave. Out of the darkness into your glorious day. I need rescue. My sin was heavy. Chains break at the weight of your glory. I needed shelter. I was an orphan. Now you call me a citizen of heaven. When I was broken, you were my healing. Your love is the air that I'm breathing. I have a future. My eyes are open, and when you call my name, I ran out of that grave. Woo! Yeah. Out of the darkness into your glorious day. You call my name, and I ran out of that grave. Out of the darkness into your glorious day.
Hey, Access family and friends. Steve Redden here from Cross Point Church. So proud, so lucky to be able to be with you guys today. You know, I wish that when you did everything right as a parent, as a student, as a married couple, as an employee or employer, I wish that that meant that everything went great for you. But sometimes, even when you do everything right, you find yourself in the fire. I want to talk to you today about faith in the fire. And I know that you guys are processing a lot of that right now with Pastor Brian and his wife Christine and Aiden and Evie with some of the difficult challenges that they have gone through recently. We sometimes think that when we find ourselves in the fire that we must have done something wrong, that God's mad at us or something like that. And can I tell you right now, that's just not true. That's a load of spiritual, I'll say the word you can say in church, nonsense. But that's just baloney, man. You can do everything right and still find yourself in the midst of very difficult heat and fire. Praying for you guys. Obviously, I'm praying for Brian and Christine and the family and all that. Just know that you guys are going to do this so well. I've been so impressed by what I've heard about you guys and how you've processed it. Miss you guys, some of you that I know really well on your elder board there, Brian and Lindsay and Justin and Beth and Ephraim and Ashley and I don't even know who else there. Andrew, who's here today helping me capture this for you guys for this weekend. But miss you guys. Let me pray for you right now. And then we're going to look at faith in the fire, looking at a story that some of you may know really well about three men named Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Let's pray real quick here. Jesus, today, as we gather together here around a table just to have a conversation and talk for a bit, there are some of us that aren't going through the fire at all right now. Life has actually gone really well, even in the midst of this COVID crisis. But man, others of us are in the heat and in the fire, and some of us are in between. So God, for wherever we're at today, by your Spirit, would you take the words I'm about to share here in this message and just encourage people, convict people that need that. God, we don't want shame or guilt. So let all that fade away and let this be exhortation, encouragement for this family, this Access Church family today. Amen. If you got a Bible, find the book of Daniel, Daniel chapter 3. You can get it in a paper Bible, a screen Bible. You can also get a piece of paper out or something to jot some things down. We're going to have you have a few things that you'll maybe want to write down as we go through this today. Daniel chapter 3. If you in your Bible you find Psalms in the middle, go past Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon. Then there's Isaiah. Then there's Jeremiah, Ezekiel. Well, there's little Lamentations between there, but Ezekiel, Daniel. Daniel tells us the story of what happened when Babylon and Nebuchadnezzar came and just flattened Israel, demolished their temple, burned everything to the ground. They took the best and the brightest, Daniel is one of the guys, and then his three buddies. And their names weren't Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Their names were Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. But their names got changed to kind of help them understand that Babylon's in charge now. And they're going to redefine your culture, change your name, change your identity. And they changed their names to pagan Babylonian deities. Daniel's name was also changed, but for some reason he keeps his core identity as Daniel. And you can read, if you want at some point, the stories that lead up to this. But in Daniel chapter 3, let's take a look at this here. It says, King Nebuchadnezzar, Neb, made a gold statue 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide. Just picture how big that is. And set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Then he sent messengers to the high officers, officials, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the provincial officials to come to the dedication of the statue he had set up. So all these officials came and stood before the statue King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then a herald shouted out, "People of all races and nations," nations, you can hear the echo on the plain, "and languages, listen to the king's command. When you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipes, and other musical instruments, bow to the ground to worship King Nebuchadnezzar's gold statue. Anyone who refuses to obey will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace." If ever there was a turn or burn message, this is it right now. What they're basically saying is, look, in Babylon, all those other cultures that were now in Babylon, because Babylon now rules the world, they said, look, it's fine for you to keep your little deities. You want to worship Jehovah God, or your god or goddess of this or that over there. That's fine. You can do that at those little side temples and all that. But don't bring that into the public square. You need to worship the God of this culture. And at this point, Nebuchadnezzar says, "It's me." Our culture does the same thing really in different ways today. It doesn't tell us we're going to burn you physically and alive. But basically, you're going to get burned unless you worship our gods, the gods of success and pleasure and materialism and sensuality and power, all those kind of gods. If you don't bow and worship our gods, unless you compromise your faith, they'll tell you, look, you can worship Jesus if you want. You can be a Christian if you want, but don't bring that stuff into the workplace, into the public arena. And if you do, you're going to get burned. You'll be threatened, you'll be intimidated, could job loss, financial loss, all those kinds of things that happen. In the next few verses, in verses 7 through 12, let me just summarize it real quick for you. The band plays, and these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they don't bow down. They stand up there. They say, look, God's our God, not Nebuchadnezzar. We're not going to bow down. And people find out about it. And the news gets back. Because Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, although they are Hebrews, they're Israelites, they've been here in Babylon now, and they have risen up to very high levels of prominence. And people don't like the fact that these foreigners have come in and risen up to high levels of political influence and leadership. So some people who are jealous of that, who don't like that, go and tell the king. Look at verse 13. Then Nebuchadnezzar flew into a rage and ordered that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought before him. When they were brought in, Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you refuse to serve my gods or to worship the gold statue I have set up? I'll give you one more chance." This is what you moms and dads do at Walmart all the time. When your kids are wigging out and freaking out, this is Nebuchadnezzar going, I'm going to count to 3. I'll give you one more chance to bow down and worship the statue I have made when you hear the sound of the musical instruments. But if you refuse, you will be thrown immediately into the blazing furnace. And then what God will be able to rescue you from my power? What he's basically saying is, I'm Nebuchadnezzar, I rule the world. No God could rescue you from my power. And he counts to 3. And then we hear in verses 16 to 18, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego speak to him. And in my Bible, I've got some of these things underlined and bolded and highlighted. I'd encourage you to do that, whether you're using a digital Bible or a paper Bible. But these are powerful verses. I'd encourage some of you to maybe even memorize these. But here's their reply. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God whom we serve is able to save us. But he's not just able to save us, he will rescue us from your power, your majesty. But even if he doesn't," and I have that underlined in my Bible and highlighted, "we want to make it clear to you, your majesty, that we will never serve your gods or worship the gold statue you have set up. They tell him right now, look, we're not going to do what you're telling us we have to do. We can't be bought and we can't be threatened. We're going to serve the God that we know is the one true God. Now, there's a very important side note in here to help set some context for this. There are times in our culture, with our boss at work, maybe with our government officials, where we're going to go, man, what they're asking me to do or tell me to do is a compromise, and I don't want to do that. It'd be fascinating to read chapter 1, because in chapter 1, they're told you got to eat the king's food that's been sacrificed to these demon gods and goddesses. It's the kind of food that you're not supposed to eat as Israelites. But instead of standing up and saying, we're not going to do that, you know what they do? They negotiate. They say, could we try this? They do some things behind the scenes. They don't just raise up and stand up. They also were told they had to study at the university systems for the leaders of Babylonian officials, and they didn't take a stand there. You know what they did? They just did it. They went to school there. They learned all about the culture. They learned all about the gods without worshiping and serving those gods, without giving up their identity. And so sometimes not everything has to be a fight. We're not called to stand up and fight about everything as Christians, but certainly there are times when we'll need to disagree with what the culture, with what leaders may be asking us to say or to do. Sometimes we're not even called just to disagree. We're called to defy those leaders. We're called to say, there's no way. We're called to stand up to do what they just did right here. But you see what they do in here? This is important for the times we find ourselves in. I don't know if you've noticed, but the rhetoric is getting really revved up right now about businesses and churches and schools getting reopened again, and the government's overreaching or overreacting. And man, you can just look at social media and the news media and see how revved up that's getting. I want to encourage you as someone, whether you're a follower of Jesus or not, here's a powerful principle in here, that even when we're called to defy our leadership and say we're not going to bow, we're not going to do this, do you notice in here twice they don't look at him and say, Nebuchadnezzar, you're a joke. You're a fool, man. Who do you think you are? What do you think you are, pal? They don't do any of that. You know what they call him twice? Look at it. Your Majesty. They show great deference and great respect, even though they're going to defy his order. That's an important principle for us right now. Even when we have strong opinions about where we think we need to disagree or defy what our people leadership might ask us to do, always do it with great respect. Here's real faith, though. They're being told you're going to be thrown into that fire. And they say here, maybe you want to write this down about what real faith looks like when the flames are burning hot and you're being called to compromise, or even when you're hoping that God comes through for you in some way. Here's what real faith looks like. I know God can, and I know God will, but even if he doesn't. I know God can, and I know God will. And I just know right now, situations I know about in my own church, in people that are close friends, and I know that's going on there in the Access Church community and family. Some of you are facing medical things that are very challenging. Real faith says, I know God can, and I know God will, but even if he doesn't, God's still my God. I'm not going to walk away from him if he doesn't come through for me the way that I think that he should, or I believe that he will. Sometimes there are situations, what if he doesn't come through like I want to in my workplace, in my school, in my career, my education? God, what if he doesn't come through like getting this COVID virus thing over with and finding treatment and a vaccine or something very quickly? What if he doesn't come through? I believe he can. I believe he will. But even if he doesn't, God, you're still my God. I'm not going anywhere. Fertility issues of wanting a family so badly. and wondering, God, we've done everything. We've been obedient to you. We've trusted you. We've loved you. We know you can, and we know you will. But even if you don't, God, I want to be married, or I want to date somebody. I've done this all right. I'm honoring you with how I date and having good boundaries and purity and all that stuff. I know you can. I know you will. But even if you don't, I'm not going anywhere. I think even about stuff with our kids. Moms and dads, you've done parenting. Nobody does it perfectly, but you go, God, we've done this really great. We've been great parents to these kids, and I know you can. And I know you will. I know you will. But even if you don't, even if you don't, we're not going anywhere. You're still going to be God, and I won't get that, and I won't be happy about it. I mean, nobody wants to get thrown into the fire. Nobody wants that. But God, even if you don't, I'm not going anywhere. See, guys, this is fascinating too, because how do you have that kind of faith? Sometimes we think that kind of faith is we're not supposed to compromise, we're supposed to stand true to our faith and be true to God no matter what. And sometimes we've made that be all about just obey the rules and do the right thing and suck it up, buttercup, no matter what. This is not suck it up, buttercup kind of faith. This is not, grit your teeth and self-discipline. This is not about compliance to a code. This is about love. This is about, man, I know who he is. I don't always get him. I don't always understand him. But there's no way. It's inconceivable. It was inconceivable to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that they would compromise their faith, not because, Exodus chapter 20, verse 1 says, don't have any false gods. This wasn't about compliance to a code. See, sometimes people think, it's about rules and following the rules. This is not about that. This is about your heart and your passion for God. In fact, it's fascinating that in the Old Testament, that we think is all about rules, and there's certainly a lot of them in there. Man, when God, before he gives them any rules, he says, hear this, Israel. Hear this, my people. I am the one and only God. I'm the one and only God. Love me with all your heart and soul, mind and strength. And then you know what happens? When you love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, you know what happens? The rules take care of themselves. You don't follow the rules because it's the right thing to do. It's like, how could I not? He's my God. I love him. He's the passion of my heart. And Jesus, when he's asked in the New Testament, in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, it's repeated several times. What's the greatest thing that God requires of us? He says, you know what it is. And he just says, it's what Deuteronomy told you, what I told you before I gave you any rules. You're my people. I'm your God. Just love me. Just love me. That's really how you have faith in the fire. I know God can. I know God will. It's because he's got my heart. He's captured my heart. This is what the essence of Christianity is all about. If you're not a Christian yet, this is what we're calling you to, not to become a Christian because it's the right thing to do and God will throw you into hell if you don't. That'll never do anything for you. You know how you become a Christian? It's like, Jesus is amazing. He died on the cross for me, and that kind of love, man, I'm just giving him my whole life. So when you're in those places of being tempted to compromise your faith, or when you're in places of going, God, I got stuff that I'm dealing with right now, and I want you to help me with this. How do we say, God, I know you can, and I know you will, but even if you don't, I'm not going anywhere? That's an easy thing to say right now for me sitting here at a table and talking to you guys right now. That can be an easy thing to go, that's right, in church, at home. But what happens when that fire is blazing hot and the flames are right there? How do you stay faithful to that in the midst of but it's one thing to stay, I'm going to stay true to God no matter what, and then the no matter what is right there. There's really some real consequences there with my health, with my finances, with my kids, with my job, with whatever it might be. See, maybe write this down today. I always pray, God, save me from the fire. Save my friends from the fire, from the pain and the suffering of difficult financial or health or family issues or kid issues. God, save me from that. But write this down today. We're often saved. We're often saved not saved from the fire, we're saved through the fire. That God often saves us through, not from the fire. Look what happens here. Verse 19. Nebuchadnezzar was so furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that his face became distorted with rage. Moms and dads, you ever been there? You know what it is to be like, oh, you did not just do, and yeah. You know what that's like. He commanded that the furnace be heated 7 times hotter than usual. And then he ordered some of the strongest men of his army to bind. That's an important principle here. We're going to see 4 times he says, bind them or tie them up. That's going to be an important point later. Bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them into the blazing furnace. So they tied them up and threw them into the furnace, fully dressed in their pants, turbans, robes, and other garments. And because the king in his anger had demanded such a hot fire in the furnace, the flames killed the soldiers as they threw the men in. It's so hot that the heat coming off of that fire destroyed 3 special forces soldiers in Nebuchadnezzar's army. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, securely tied, fell into the roaring flames. But suddenly Nebuchadnezzar jumped up in amazement, exclaimed to his advisors, didn't we tie up 3 men and throw them into the furnace? Yes, Your Majesty, we certainly did, they responded. Look, Nebuchadnezzar shouted, I see 4 men unbound. Remember I told you, tied up, unbound, walking around in the fire, unharmed. And the 4th looks like a god or a son of God is the actual translation there. These guys were saved not from the fire, but through the fire. And do you see what happens there too? It says 4 times they were tied up and they were bound up, fully clothed. Write this down. This is important. The fire can free you from what binds you. And I don't know what binds you up today. What kind of addiction, whether it's pleasure or spending or sex or pornography or power or just something that just has you all bound up and tied up. Maybe it's social anxiety, it's depression, it's anger, whatever it might be. I can tell you this right now, by my own experience and by all kinds of people from 2,000 years now of the kingdom of God and Jesus' way, working its way into people's lives, that sometimes the things that bind us up aren't going to come off until we go through a really intense fire. And I've seen it happen in my life. I've seen it happen in all kinds of people's lives. The fire can free you from what binds you. And they're walking around in there. And Nebuchadnezzar, it says he sees a 4th person in the fire. And that 4th person, people debate and wonder, is it an angel? Was it God? What people that are very smart and who study the Bible like crazy have said here is this is the Son of God. This is not yet Jesus, because the Son of God is the 2nd person of the Trinity. And the 2nd person of the Trinity, Father, Son, and Spirit. The Son is born into our world as Jesus of Nazareth. But for eternity past, he was the Son of God, and that Son of God comes right there in the flames with them. And you need to know this. A great way to have faith in the fire is that we're often saved through, not from the fire, that the fire can free us from what binds us. And when you're in the fire, there's always someone else with you. Jesus promises, he said, I'll never leave you. I will never forsake you. And I love what Isaiah chapter 43, verse 2 says it this way. When you go through deep waters, I'll be with you. When you go through rivers of difficulty, you'll not drown. When you walk through the fire of oppression, you will not be burned up, or the flames will not consume you. He says, I'm not going to save you from the heat and the fire. You're going to go through fire, but it won't destroy you. It won't burn you up, and I will be with you. I'll be right there. Jesus will be with you right there in the fire. And I just know in my own life, knowing all kinds of people's lives, that sometimes people talk about, man, I wouldn't want to go through that again, but I encountered and experienced Jesus in such a profound, beautiful way that I never had before and never have since. So you wonder what happens here. They're walking around in the fire. Then Nebuchadnezzar, verse 26, came as close as he could to the door of the flaming furnace and shouted, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego stepped out of the fire. Then the high officers, officials, governors, and advisors crowded around them and saw that the fire hadn't touched them. Not a hair on their heads was singed. Shut up. Not a hair on their heads was singed. Where was I? And their clothing was not scorched. They didn't even smell of smoke. Here's what I love about this. You can go through intense trials and come out and people will be amazed because you're not bitter. You don't have the stench of the trial still on you. There's not all this hardness of heart and this unforgiveness that's in there. You can go through really deep trials and not getting any on you. Right down this way. It's possible to go through the fire and not stink after. Paul talks about having the aroma of Christ about us, even in the midst of trials. And I think it's a beautiful thing that comes out of this. And it goes on to tell us, Nebuchadnezzar, in the next, read it on your own later, stands up and says, look, anybody who says that their God isn't God, I'm going to tear your arms off of you. Their God is the one and only true God. And then it says he promotes Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to even higher positions. See, here's the beautiful part about when we go through trials. God gets glorified, and sometimes we get elevated. People see things and go, I don't know what that is, but that was amazing what you went through and how you came through that and you stayed true to your faith. You didn't compromise anything. And I just want that in my company. I want that on my team. God just elevates us up in those kind of situations. Look, real faith in the fire. Say it with me right now is, I know God, come on, can, and I know God will, but even if, come on, all you guys from your couches, from the jacuzzi, from your, wherever you're watching or listening to this, but even if he doesn't, I'm not going anywhere. God's still my God. And that faith in the fire means that God saves us through, not always from the fire. The fire can free you from what binds you. And that there's always someone with you in the fire. His name is Jesus. And it's possible to go through the fire and not stink afterward. Love you guys. Praying for you guys. Know that you'll go through fires and tribulations, but God will always be glorified. It'll be beautiful to watch what he does to elevate you as you go through that and afterward.
Lord, I come, I confess, bowing here I find my rest. Without you, I'd fall apart. teach my song to rise to you. When temptation comes my way, when I cannot stand, I will fall on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness, oh God, how I need you. My one defense, my righteousness, oh God, how I need you.
You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, moving in this place. I worship you. I worship you. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, mending every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, turning lives around. I stop working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, you never stop working. That is who you are. That is who you are. Darkness, my God, that is who you are. 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 In the morning when I rise, in the morning when I rise, in the morning when I rise, give me Jesus, give me Jesus. In the morning when I rise, in the morning when I rise, in the morning when I rise, give me Jesus, give me Jesus, give me Jesus, give me Jesus. You can have of this world. Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. When I am alone, oh, when I am alone, oh, when I am alone, give me Jesus, give me Jesus, give me Jesus, give me Jesus. You can have all this world. Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. When I come to die, oh, when I come to die, oh, when I come to die, give me Jesus.
Thanks for joining us. For more resources, to get involved, or to invest in the ministries at Access Church, visit go2accesschurch.com. Take care.